Good morning. Welcome to all of you, and thank you all for coming. Last week, our Board of Education adopted dual enrollment policy for Rhode Island. I know that our program, which has existed for many years, is a working model for that policy. In conjunction with that, there's a national move to experiment with making Pell Grant money available for needy students to help defray the cost of dual enrollment fees, and Governor Raimondo has recently declared that state money will be provided to allow students opportunities for dual enrollment in early enrollment classes. Information on both of these topics can be found in our Sakai resources at the top of the list. As you know, our theme today is digital literacy. We will consider how it impacts the writing of our students and our teaching of writing as we prepare them for the 21st century that's trademark is technology and the new paradigm of media and communication it has brought. Before I go on, I'd like to take a moment to recognize everyone participating in today's activity. First and foremost, all of you who are teaching these high school juniors and seniors in a college writing class. Having started as a high school teacher and having taught this course at Tiverton High School at its very beginning from 1989 to 1993, I know the challenges that are unique to your circumstances, different than the challenges we face here at the university. Thanks for taking that on. I'd like to welcome the Newport teachers from Rogers High School, Zenobia, Jessica, who will be implementing the course in this upcoming academic year. Two of our teachers couldn't be here today. Kathy is home with pneumonia and Sheila is out of town this week. Sheila sent Amanda in her place. I'd like to welcome Amanda and our two other guests, Julie and Michaela. I'd like to acknowledge our presenters who have given their time to join us, Holly Walsh, Dr. Renee Hobbs, and Associate Dean Kat Quina. Finally, I'd like to introduce Sharon, who just completed Writing 104 with me this term here at the Feinstein Campus and will be assisting us through the morning. She is your go-to person if you need directions, and she'll be giving your parking passes at some point during one of our breaks. You all know who I am. Some of you may have more questions than we have time to answer, or questions about the program that are not in line with our theme for the morning. In order to stay on task with today's activities, I ask that you defer your additional questions and comments to the forums section of our Sakai page. You can also feel free at any time throughout the day or afterward to send me a tweet about the event at fromanelli41 and to tweet publicly about the day and about the program using the hashtag ECHSP. I've always had a strong sense of digital literacy in my teaching and learning. In high school in the late 1970s and early 1980s, I had a grandfather who saw the vision of computers and their impact on the future. He was a jewelry designer in Providence and a self-taught mathematician who would tease me about being an English major. I would tease back asking who would write that newspaper he read every day after playing with his zeros and ones if there were no English majors. Thankfully, he got through to me, and if you notice, there are plenty of computers around us today, but I can't remember the last time I actually read a physical newspaper. But it was really 4 years ago when I saw my first RSA animate and started reading books like Clay Shirky's Cognitive Surplus and Doug Rushkoff's Program or Be Programmed, 10 Commands for a Digital Age, that I was truly inspired to think about writing and communication in a different way, and that's when I made this video in March 2011.
Have you ever wondered if the people of the Anglo-Saxon period lamented when information started being exchanged by paper, quill, and ink, instead of lyrical songs with lutes and lyres? Did they mourn the death of the oral tradition, or celebrate the beginning of literacy? Probably both. How did people in 1446 feel when Gutenberg published his first edition of Poem of the Last Judgment? Some were probably ecstatic, while others feared the loss of the quill and the beauty of handwriting. I'm guessing in both cases, some saw it as a dumbing down of a culture. They were probably afraid their children would become lazy and less educated. They probably felt like many of us do, as we face the greatest paradigm shift to redefine literacy, technology and its electronic environments. But unlike the Celts and the people of the Middle Ages, the changes we're living through have happened in a historical blink of the eye and are continuing exponentially. There are some who say that technology is our future, but it's not. It already happened. Technology is now. Like most changes that come hard and fast, myths have been created out of fear and discomfort. Dr. David Crystal is a world-renowned linguist and author. He's best known for his Cambridge Encyclopedia of Language. Dr. Crystal points out the most common of these myths and debunks them with a sensible understanding of culture and language. For example, he says that in spite of what most people think, text speak is not invading student writing. In fact, the abbreviations used in texting are few and are virtually non-existent in academic writing. Another myth debunked by Dr. Crystal is that students are not reading and writing as much as they have in the past. Students are actually doing both more now than they have since before the creation of the telephone, and maybe ever. He says that new research is starting to show that the younger students are when they begin using text messaging, the more successful they may be with standardized language assessments. More than ever, writers now need to think carefully about what to write and how to write it in order to make their messages clear and effective to their audiences. Sound familiar? Isn't that what we've been teaching them all along? New genres and a redefinition of old ones are emerging. In China and India, text novels are all the craze. Text and tweet poetry contests have already happened, and some great works have come from them. The face of journalism is changing so profoundly that countries and governments are being redefined as you're watching this video. Technology and the electronic environments it creates are not going away. They will only continue to advance. They are the new media through which writers will now share their voices. Our students may not need paper or pens much, if at all, but like the printing press and the beautiful verses of the oral tradition, print media will take their respected place in our culture as beautiful art forms to be relished and appreciated. Meanwhile, student writers still need to learn how to manage, express, and develop their ideas. That is still our job. They also need teachers who understand the world they're living in so that they can be successful communicators in their interpersonal and professional relationships. So let's ignore the myths. Language is not going to hell in a handbasket. It's going through the wires and satellites and changing our world in new and wonderful ways, as only the power of writing can. Whether it's a text, a tweet, or a blog, it is still writing.
Beyond the brief reference I made in the video, Dr. Crystal actually cites 10 common myths, some of which 4 years later, we now understand. Like this one. Texts barely have any abbreviation in them at all, and those who do abbreviate are mostly adults. We have new things to teach. For example, Dr. Crystal talks about textiquette. I recently learned from one of your classes that it's not okay with kids to send K instead of OK. They think it's rude, and another thing that only adults do. Dr. Crystal goes on to debunk another myth. This isn't new. Does anyone know what it means? It's called a rebus. Rebuses were a very popular form of communication as far back as the Middle Ages and were sometimes used for parlor games in the same spirit as charades through the 1800s. Here's a great one that Dr. Crystal uses in his book. I found an article online this week, which I posted as a link in our Sakai resources after I printed the list in your folder. It talks about the modern trend to write with subordinate clauses only. But look at this. Now look at this. And finally look at this. They are all subordinate clause dependent, but the middle one is very familiar to us as a method. The third one goes to the same sort of manipulation of text that E. E. Cummings was most noted for, in this case the opposite effect. And anyone who studied 20th century American literature may know that Cummings got his inspiration from Ezra Pound, who was doing it before him. The point again, none of this is new. Dr. Crystal goes on to say that in order for a student to leave letters out of a word, he or she would have to know what the letters were. He says that misspellings are no more present in writing than they were before. He also says that students do know the difference, and for the most part would not use text speak in their formal writing. I mentioned tweet poems. Here's the winner of a tweet poetry contest. Student overwriting has taken on a new form, but it's nothing new to us as writing teachers either. We just need to frame it in a language for a new medium. Then there are the many resources and tools. They are new and ever evolving. Most of us have been using Google Docs, and with good reason. But there are many more. In the questionnaire, you collectively mentioned more than we could cover if we had a week. You know, I'm not the first person to compare the creation of digital media to Gutenberg's printing press. In his novel Notre Dame de Paris, Victor Hugo uses his antagonist, Claude Frollo, to speak his mind. Frollo directs the eyes of two visitors from a book on his desk to the massive silhouette of Notre Dame Cathedral beyond his door. Frollo says, "This will kill that. That is the cathedral. This is the machine that produced the book on his desk, the printing press." Small things overcome great ones, Frollo laments. The book will kill the building. So the same fears that we have now as we see the development of digital literacy have existed any time there has been any kind of a paradigm shift in literacy. We have a great morning plan. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much.